Hey everyone, it's Karen again. I just wanted to update you all. I had my HSG test done today, and it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen on the screen of the tubes being clear, and my uterus is great, everything's good. But I wanted to share my my experience because all day today, this morning especially, I have been scouring YouTube for videos on women's experiences with the HSG test. And just a side note, if y'all hear any jingling or other sounds like that, and my dogs are in here, and if I close the door they're going to make even more noise, so it's just better to have them in here. So say hi. Say hi. So anyway, to get on with my HSG experience, I had kind of a hectic, chaotic ride to journey to the hospital today. I was supposed to get off at 10:30 today, and we had a client stay late, and I had to stay a little bit longer and help out. So I didn't leave until almost 10:40. Well, I only live about 15 minutes from the hospital, but I still had to go home and change and get my husband. So I rushed home, and really, madam. I rushed home and quickly changed real quick. I already had my clothes laid out from this morning and got my husband out the door. We are about a minute down the road, and my husband goes, "Oh hey, did you take your ibuprofen?" Crap! Slam on the brakes. Thankfully there's no one behind me. I'm a better driver than that. Turned into a driveway, turned back around, went in, got the ibuprofen, big bottle of water, out the door we go. Stressing to the max. I hate being late. It is a big pet peeve of mine. I can't stand it. So, traffic was slow. It seemed like we hit every single traffic light possible. And my appointment was at 11. Wound up signing in at 11:03. Which isn't terrible, but for someone who has anxiety about being late, it was just, it had my nerves in a complete bind. And I know I shouldn't be that way. There's a lot bigger problems in the world than that, but it just started it off wrong. So, anyways, I got signed in. We went down to the radiology waiting room, and when I get nervous, I feel like I constantly have to pee. And from what everyone had told me, sorry, I had to check and make sure it was still recording. It made some weird noise. From what everyone had told me, from the pressure of the HSG test, you would feel like you might feel like you have to poop or pee on yourself because of the pressure. So I wanted to make sure that my bladder was empty. So I kept feeling like I had to pee. On my second trip to the bathroom of just sitting in there, my husband knocked on the door and said, "Hey, they're calling you." So I go, thankfully, felt like I had fully emptied my bladder, which I probably had the first time. But he had to stay. Some hospitals and states and different places will allow your husband to come back with you or your significant other, but unfortunately mine does not. So he had to stay in the waiting room, and so they took me back in the room, and if I can figure out how to insert a picture, I'll insert a picture of the room that I was in. It's kind of a small room with a lot of equipment in there. But there were about 3 nurses, and they were so down to earth. They were so nice, and they really made all the difference because my nerves were in a complete mess. Not only from the ride there, being anxious, but just anxious about the test in general. So they were so sweet and so down to earth and just, were cracking jokes with me and just really made me feel comfortable. We even had a good long joke about technology when they had me set up, just laying on the table. We hadn't put the catheter or anything like that in yet. The doctor hadn't been in. But the nurse couldn't get the TV monitor to come on so that they could do the procedure. So we wound up having to walk to the next room over. So we had a good long joke about, shining booties. So we kept she would follow behind me and like hold the side of my robe so that my butt wasn't shining to the world. You gotta love hospital gowns. So anyways, we got to the second room, looked exactly like the first, laid down, the doctor come in, and there's no stirrups on these tables. It's not like your OBGYN office. So had to scoot all the way down to the end of the table. You feel like you're frog legging it. My feet are on the very end of the table. And he inserted the speculum, which we as women all know about that from yearly exams. And the next thing that he did was he cleaned the cervix, which he had gauze with iodine on it. And he did warn me that some women say it feels like sandpaper. For me, it really wasn't necessarily a feeling. It was just kind of crampy, just a little bit. It was uncomfortable kind of cramp type deal. But it wasn't bad. It was definitely bearable. So after he cleaned the cervix, he let me know I'm about to put the catheter in, and that feeling was very much like at a yearly exam when they swab your cervix, and it's just a little bit crampy. That's exactly what it felt like. It wasn't painful, really. It was just like real mild cramp. And when he finally got the catheter in, which was a lot easier, that was one part I was scared of because I had had a bad experience with an IUD being put in. He inserted that, and because of my nerves, I got really hot and a little bit sweaty. Was feeling a little bit lightheaded. Thankfully, you're laying flat on your back, so you don't have to worry about going anywhere. So the nurse came over, and she was nice enough to kind of fan me a little bit and, ask me if I needed anything. Now, the doctor did warn me that when he inflated the balloon at the very tip of the catheter, that I was going to have some cramping because the uterus's natural instinct is to cramp back down when you blow it up. So he did warn me, and I'm glad that he did, because it did cramp for sure, but it really wasn't unbearable pain. It was like just a period cramp that wouldn't go away, but not the worst cramp I've ever experienced. It was just pressure. So as soon as he inflated that, he asked me to scoot back. So the nurse actually grabbed my shoulders and they said, just push with your feet. And pushed back, so I was completely flat again, and they moved the x-ray machine over my abdomen and pelvic area. And then the x-ray tech came in, and it was so awesome just to hear him talk. It was kind of a distraction because he has an Australian accent. And, I mean, we're in Alabama. We're all southern, so an Australian accent is really, really cool here. You don't hear it very often. So that was a good distraction. It was something I could focus on. And then they turned the screen so that I could see what was going on, and that was my lifesaver because distraction is key for me. I can deal with anything as long as I can see what's going on and why I'm feeling what I'm feeling. So he said, okay, the cramps might intensify just a little bit. I'm going to inject the fluid, inject the dye now, the iodine. And it, again, not painful, but just a period cramp that won't go away. Lots of pressure. I did not get the feeling that I was going to poop or pee on myself. Every woman's experience is different. I didn't experience that. I did feel a lot of pressure, and I did definitely do some deep breathing. But looking at the screen, it was really kind of cool to see the fluid go up and then start spilling out. And as soon as it started spilling out, I swear I could have cried, because that meant that the very last thing that could have been wrong with me was completely ruled out. We've already done the chromosomal testing, any genetics, all the blood work that we could possibly do to see if there's anything wrong with me. It's been completed and I'm healthy, I'm fine. This was the very last thing in our way before we could move on to IUI. So to see that dye spill out, it was the most beautiful thing that I think I've ever seen. Afterwards, dye wasn't even in there, not even a minute. It was so quick. The whole procedure from the catheter in to x-rays and taking everything out was maybe 3 minutes. It was really quick. So they drain the dye back out through the catheter, remove it. The nurse came in, gave me a pad because you do need it. He said that I would have a little bit of maybe iodine leakage for the next couple of days, and some spotting. And also warned me that there may be some discharge because you've basically just cleaned out the uterus and tubes. So anything that was remnants in there, you discharge, anything like that, it's going to come out. So I'm glad he warned me of that. I haven't had that yet. I've had a little bit of spotting, but nothing to that nature. So anyways, once everything's out, I'm sitting up, the doctor comes and says, you know, we're good. The next thing is I go on cycle day, between cycle day 21 and 24 of this month, and we'll get a progesterone draw just to make sure that I'm ovulating. And then after I start my period at the end of April, that's when we'll come back and we will be doing IUI. So this coming month in May, hopefully we'll be getting pregnant with our first baby. You know, I know that a lot of women, their first IUI isn't successful, and that may be the case for us, but this is a starting point, and we've had to go through so many hoops to get where we are now. You know, from my husband having surgeries and doing all the blood work, and it's just been a long ride. And by the time May gets here, we'll have been trying for 1 year and 8 months. So it's past time. We're really excited, and I'm so thankful to have the HSG test out of the way. I don't have to do it again. I'm done. But, you know, again, I just wanted to share my experience with this test because it really helped me to listen to other women's testimonies on their experiences, because things that they experienced, some of what they experienced I did as well, and some I didn't. So it's just nice to hear and to kind of halfway know what you're expecting, because, you know, you really don't know your own pain tolerance unless you've been through something like that. So I had no clue. And on a side note to that, I don't really have a lot of things done at the hospital, because when they called me yesterday to get me pre-registered for surgery, they still had my pediatrician on file as my primary care doctor, and I'll be 30 this year. So that tells you how often I am at our hospital. Anyways, I am so happy that it's all said and done. We're moving forward. It's out of the way. We're almost there. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching this and following along with my fertility story. Here's hoping that this journey will end with a baby. I know there's lots of women out there struggling with the same things, and I'm finding it more and more. And you know, I just feel that we can all share together and help each other through all of this, because doing it alone is just, it's awful. It's a very lonely journey. So anyways, thank you so much for watching. I will keep you updated. I might do little mini things in between waiting, because there really won't be any fertility updates until the progesterone draw, which is in a couple of weeks. But after that, there won't be much of an update until we get started on the prep for IUI. So there may be a little gap in between videos, so just bear with me. I do update on Instagram pretty regularly. I'll leave that link down below in the description bar if you want to follow me there. So that's it, and we'll see y'all next time.